We are taking an in-depth look right now at the Anna Kepner case, the investigation into the death of an 18-year-old from Titusville who was found dead last month on board a Carnival cruise ship. There have been few details released. The FBI has essentially said nothing in this, but we have learned from court documents filed in an unrelated family court case that Anna's 16-year-old stepbrother is the main suspect in this. And that family court case has really been the only source, as we have talked time and time again, really been the only source of information about this investigation. In fact, new documents that Fox 35 has obtained now detail that Anna Kepner died by asphyxiation and was found under the bed inside a room on that cruise ship. So we are continuing to get some more details about this case from that family court case, which is essentially a custody dispute following a divorce involving Anna Kepner's stepmother. Now, they were in court this morning and had some new details that came out of that and fleshed out a little bit more of what may or may not have happened on board that cruise ship. I'm going to bring in now Lauren Cadilac, who is an attorney out of Texas and has joined us for perspective and analysis on a number of cases before, an attorney and a legal expert. And Lauren, we appreciate you joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lauren, I first want to start because, these are details, the new details we were able to confirm from these new court documents this week showing the cause of death. These are things that the medical examiner has not even released officially, even though we have asked time and time again. They're citing an ongoing investigation and saying they don't have to release these, but these are details that we're learning about a very serious criminal case in a civil court hearing. And we've talked before about how this is rather unusual.
Yeah, it's definitely the first time I've ever seen such a thing. However, and as unusual it does actually make sense. The way our government is structured, one hand does not necessarily communicate with the other. So the criminal investigation is an FBI investigation. It's a federal jurisdiction because it was on open waters in the sea, and it was an American citizen. And my understanding is that ship was flying the U.S. flag. So the FBI would have the criminal jurisdiction. And while your local medical examiner would follow what the FBI says, do not release this information, it's ongoing investigation, your local family courts have nothing to do with that and are completely separate from that investigation. And in fact, wouldn't even really consider that investigation in making their decisions. So it's strange, but it's not, it doesn't surprise me.
And there was an attempt for a gag order and to kind of seal this case from the public and from other things that would keep some of these details from coming out. We know the judge had previously denied that, and I would have to imagine that that was something the FBI probably wanted to see, because if they are staying quiet on this, it's clear they don't want a lot of information about this case coming out, at least not yet.
Well, that's true, but if the FBI really wanted that gag order, they would have had a Department of Justice attorney file a motion for it. So apparently they're not that concerned about the family law case. And maybe a reason for that is because this case involves minors. And when it comes to minors in the civil courts, they are highly protected. Divorce matters are often, in minor children. The children are often named by initial only. And a lot of details that relate to the child directly are not necessarily put into public documents. They're guarded because it is not of the best interest of a child to someday go for a job and have a potential employer find things that their parents said about them when they were 7 or 8. So it is quite possible that the FBI is certainly aware of that and how family courts operate in that sense. So it's quite possible that they're not as concerned because of that aspect.
This court hearing in Brevard County today, it was open. We know they had moved it to a larger courtroom because of the interest in it, and it was. We heard it was essentially a hearing for the judge to decide whether to grant an emergency motion, essentially to remove one of the other minors, one of the other kids, from the custody of Anna's one of the parents out of the home, because of the concern about the 16-year-old stepbrother of Anna, who is considered to be the main and, as we have learned, only suspect in this case, that in the death investigation. And so I do want to note, I'm going to play a few clips here, but we're going to start with the opening statements from the attorneys. One of the attorneys is representing Anna's stepmother, and the other attorney is representing Anna's stepmother's ex-husband. So no relation to Anna, and that's where this gets a little bit, convoluted. But I do want to warn folks too, because we were not able to live stream the hearing. So we have gone back and edited this, and we have taken great care to edit out the names of those minor children who were named, because obviously that is something that we will not do. And so there will be some times where it may not exactly be clear who the judge and the others are referring to. And then there are times that it will be clear that they are referring to the unnamed 16-year-old who is the suspect. So I just want to give that kind of preface before we start playing the clip here. But I'm going to start, Lauren, by showing the opening statement. We're going to hear from the judge who talked about kind of what we're hearing in this case, and then the opening statements from each of the attorneys on both sides of this former marriage as they go through this custody dispute. So again, this happened just a little bit ago in Brevard County.
I reviewed the emergency motion for temporary relief, Mr. Smith, and it does appear as though a lot of the allegations alleged within that motion are really in the nature of contempt. I know that there is a contempt proceeding, a contempt hearing being held on December the 17th, I believe, before Magistrate Valentine. The court's purpose in the hearing today is only to address the issues as it relates to an emergency. So as I'm looking at the motion, the paragraph specifically that the court will address would be related to paragraph 7. The 16-year-old child is now a suspect in the death of the stepchild during the cruise. While released from custody, the 16-year-old child is residing with a third party. Paragraph 17, the 16-year-old's future has been put in jeopardy because of the choices made by the respondent. And paragraph 19, and most importantly, the youngest child is at immediate risk of abuse, abandonment, or neglect in the care of the respondent. So those are the issues that the court is going to address here this morning, is whether or not, in fact, the court needs to take some sort of emergency action based on those allegations contained within the motion. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Smith, you may begin with opening.
Your Honor, in this case, obviously, it's our position that the youngest child is at risk for a number of reasons. As the court is aware through the pleadings, there's a young lady who's passed away. That matter is still under investigation. That was not my client's child, but the stepchild of the mother in this case, and the remaining 16-year-old is now a suspect in that case. In this case, the mother took the children, both again, on a cruise against my client's wishes, while preventing him from having regular contact with those children. We believe that the arrangements that were made by the mother, as far as the sleeping arrangements, were insufficient, that the 18-year-old, the 16-year-old, and another 14-year-old were all placed in the same stateroom. There's indications that they They may have, because they were in international waters, may have been engaging in activities that they normally couldn't engage in while they were in the United States properly being supervised. In addition, we will present evidence that through the older child, who's now 18, so he's an adult, but he is the son of the parties, as to violence, alcohol use in the past, and he's been living with his father for approximately almost 2 years now, since these parties had their separation, where, as the court is aware, there was an original divorce case, there was parenting time, both parties were in Hernando County, then the mother relocated by agreement between the parties over to Titusville. Since she relocated to Titusville, that's when the problems have occurred, where the father has been very limited in his access to the children. I'd reserve with regard to any other comments until closing.
Well, let me ask you this question, Mr. Smith. If the oldest child has been residing with the respondent for 2 years, and this we're dealing, I understand, I saw that there is a supplemental petition for modification that's also pending, so that would be an ultimate issue for trial. How would this, is it your intention to have the oldest child testify?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what if has the oldest child had any contact with the 2 other children or the respondent since he's been living with the petitioner for the last 2 years?
Well, one of the main things is the circumstances where he wound up living with my client. There was a physical altercation.
That would have been 2 years ago, correct?
A year and a half, yes, Your Honor. And he was also allowed to drink alcohol, which again I think goes to the relevancy of whether these children whether the mother in this case encouraged the underage alcohol, especially on the cruise ship. And the violence this, again, the allegations are this 18-year-old has passed away in a violent manner. The 18-year-old will testify is that there was violence between himself, his mother, and the stepfather. And he has had recent contact with, and I think that goes to the whether there's any risk to returning to the father. The child was allowed finally to come over for a Thanksgiving visit.
The child being okay.
She was restricted from contact with the one that there are allegations against, but did have contact with Andrew, her adult brother, and exhibited no fear, no reservations. Both my client as well as the 18-year-old can testify about that.
Well, remember though, this isn't we're here on an emergency motion, so this isn't an issue as to where it is in the best interest of the minor children to reside. I mean, that is ultimately an issue for trial in the modification action. The only issue that we're here to address today is whether or not is in imminent danger remaining in the petitioner's care as a result of recent incidents. So that's really primarily the court's concern today.
Well, and Your Honor, I understand that position, and certainly whether or not the child's to be removed from the mother is whether or not there's an imminent risk to the child. I think the court also has to look at where the child would be placed and the circumstances there as to whether there's any harm to relocating the child. I think you have to, in terms of emergency relief and an injunction, essentially, you have to look at...
No, I think you're looking at two different things. This isn't an injunctive relief. I mean, you're not here seeking injunctive relief. I mean, that would have been in the injunction court, correct?
We're seeking to have the child removed from the mother and placed with the father. So I think that the court needs to look at whether or not there would be any harm to that. Obviously, our position is there wouldn't be, that she'd be able to transition to the father fine.
Okay, I'm not sure I agree with your argument, Mr. Smith, but I understand what your argument is. Okay. Ms. Anderson, opening?
Yes. Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. We believe, and I think we filed that in our response, that there's no emergency that exists. There was an incident on the cruise ship. The Federal Bureau of Investigations is investigating that. There have been no arrests made yet, but since my clients were advised that the was a suspect in that, after he was released from the hospital upon the return to the United States, he was placed with a relative of the mother's. And not only did that happen, but mom contacted dad, and dad signed an agreement to say that this child would be placed with a third party, thereby removing any risk of any danger to any of the other children in the home. So that has been resolved, and there's been nothing mentioned of that. Nobody's saying, I don't hear the other side saying that they participated in that in any way, whereas the father was advised and did participate. The minor child, you're going to hear testimony that she's fine, that there is no risk to her. There were abuse reports made. We have a person here from the Department of Children and Families that can attest that there's no concerns about the child remaining in the care of Shauntel and Chris Kepner.
All right, thank you.
So that was the opening statements from both attorneys, and Lauren Cadilac, an attorney and a legal analyst, joining me now to talk a little bit about this. And we heard the judge kind of really making it clear that this was all about the emergency motion to remove this other minor child from the mother, who is also Anna Kepner's stepmother, and placing it with the father. And we heard some back and forth between the judge and one of the attorneys. Did anything stand out to you there, Lauren, from what we heard?
It did. In fact, I wrote a note that the ex-husband's attorney seems a bit confused about the types of relief and the types of motions. For instance, in the very beginning, the judge said, I'm only going to look at these 3 or 4 items because the rest is a contempt and held in a contempt motion that's already set. Contempt is when there's a court order and it orders you to do something and you don't. And so there is an argument coming from the husband that this Anna Kepner's stepmom was not following the court order, the divorce decree. So that's one hearing, and that's going to have one set of relief. Usually that relief is not going to be to remove the children. It's going to be to slap mom's hand, maybe some sanctions, something to teach her, follow the rules here. Then there is another type of relief, which is injunctive relief. A lot of folks have heard of a restraining order. We think about them with like a stalker or someone like that. Injunctive relief is a restraining order. It restrains someone from doing something temporarily. In Texas, injunctive relief only lasts 14 days, and then you have to go back and obtain a more permanent injunction. Then finally, there's removal. So when we're talking about family law and we're talking about children, removal means taking the children from the home they're in, right? To give rise to removal, and I know you heard them say this, there has to be imminent risk. One example I could think of, maybe a city code inspector comes to a house and sees that it's a hoarder house and it's a huge danger for the children living inside of it. That's an imminent risk. That is an immediate possible harm to the children, and that could give rise to removal, depending on the circumstances, of course. What the stepmother's attorney said is facts. It's true. There is no emergency, right? The emergency happened back on the high seas. And she mentioned that this father had signed an agreement to put the 16-year-old, who is the suspect, in someone else's care. So there's no removal for that 16-year-old. And then that leaves the 8-year-old. And there's very little evidence that she could possibly be harmed, particularly because the person being accused of harming someone else has been removed. So this judge is only going to be looking at today evidence that shows there is an imminent risk to the 8 or 9-year-old child that remains in the home.
Yeah, 9 years old, I believe. And the judge ended up denying that motion for the emergency motion, but not before we heard testimony from Anna Kepner's stepmother, who talked more about the cruise ship, some of the arrangements on it, and the last time that she saw Anna Kepner and the 16-year-old stepbrother who is the suspect in this case. So we're going to take a break here on Fox Local and YouTube. When we come back, we will dive into that, and you'll get to hear some of her testimony. So keep it right here on Fox 35 News Plus, and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. Garret Wymer here, and we appreciate you joining us as we take you through some of what happened in court today in this unrelated family court issue, a custody dispute, where we have been learning more about the death of Anna Kepner. I want to bring in attorney Lauren Cadilac, who's unaffiliated with this case. She's an attorney out of Texas. She's a legal analyst and expert for us, and joins us now here on Fox 35 News Plus. And Lauren, we appreciate you joining us. Some interesting things that we're seeing come out of this hearing today.
Yes, absolutely. It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me. This case has really reeled me in, especially with this family law aspect that we don't usually see. So I'm happy to be here.
And we did hear testimony earlier today from Shauntel Kepner, who is the stepmother of Anna Kepner, the 18-year-old who was found dead on board that cruise ship. I'm not playing all of her testimony. We did cut out parts of it that were not quite as relevant. And we also cut out, obviously, parts where she mentions names of other minor children. But you're going to hear most of her testimony here, where she talked about some of what happened on the cruise, some of the arrangements on for the sleeping arrangements on the cabin, and she also discusses the last time that she saw Anna Kepner. And here is that testimony from that courtroom in Brevard County earlier today.
No, I have not. If I could get you to raise your right hand for me, please, ma'am. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may inquire whenever you're ready, Mr. Smith.
Please state your name, ma'am.
Shauntel Kepner.
And do you know Thomas Hudson?
Yes.
And how do you know Mr. Hudson?
We were formerly married.
And how long were you married?
About 12 years.
And do you have any children between the two of you?
We have 3 children.
What are their names and ages? And there recently was did you recently go on a cruise?
Yes.
And did any of the children go with you on the cruise? Did you reach out to Mr. Hudson to request that he agree to passports for the children?
I reached out to him to inform him of my itinerary to take the children on a cruise, and did ask for the passports, but they weren't needed in this cruise.
And Mr. Hudson actually refused to cooperate with obtaining passports, correct?
To sign for the passports, yes.
You said passports weren't necessary, so they weren't obtained?
Correct.
As far as the minor children, what were the sleeping arrangements on this cruise?
Was in my room with my husband and his 9-year-old daughter, and then shared a room with his stepsister and stepbrother. The room was directly across from ours.
What was the stepsister's name?
Anna Kepner.
And what was the stepbrother's name? And how old is?
14.
And how old was Anna?
18.
Now, who made the decision to have these 3 teenagers in one room in the cruise?
We had talked it over with our traveler agent, and that was what was suggested.
Did you have to sign any special permission for
No.
the children to reside together? So was it a mutual decision between yourself and your husband?
Correct.
And at some point, did you discover that one of the children had passed away?
Yes.
And when was that you discovered that?
Friday morning.
When was the last time that you had seen the child before that Friday morning?
Thursday night.
You know approximately what time?
Right around 6:30.
And your child, did you see him that Thursday night as well?
Yes.
What time did you see him at?
Closer to 7. Just a little bit before 7.
What was he doing at that time?
He was headed back to his room.
Do you know whether or not he was present in the room as well?
They all were headed back to their room, as far as I know.
So where was their room in relation to your room?
Right across the hall. You walked out my door, their door was right in front of it.
Did you return to your room that evening?
Yes.
What time did you return to your room?
7 o'clock.
7 p.m.?
Yeah, right. It was actually closer to 7:30.
Did you stay in the room for the rest of the night?
Yes.
With the teenagers across the hall, did you ever go in and check on them?
No, I had went to sleep.
Do you know if Christopher went across the hall to check on them?
Not that I know of.
Do you know if he ever left the room that night on that Thursday night?
I never seen him leave the room.
As far as goes, have you made arrangements for to reside with a relative?
Correct.
And why did you do that?
It was something that his father and I mutually decided.
Did you suggest it to him, or did he suggest it to you? Who brought it up first?
It was something that we had talked about because neither one of us could bring him back to our home.
Why couldn't you bring back to your home?
Looking out for the safety of the other children in the home.
Now, when you talk about the home, you have a home with Christopher, your husband?
Yes.
And does Christopher have other children that come to that home?
He has 2 other kids.
And one of them being,
Correct.
and the younger child that slept in the room with you as well?
Yes.
Is Christopher still allowed to come to the home?
Yes.
How many bedrooms is the home that you're in?
We have a 3-bedroom house with an addition room downstairs.
So what are the sleeping arrangements when all the kids were there prior to this cruise?
The 2 youngest girls shared a room, the 2 boys shared a room, and Anna had her own room.
As far as the evening, that Thursday evening on the cruise, had you been drinking at all?
No.
Had you drank it all during the cruise?
I had 2 pina coladas and a blue Hawaiian earlier in the week. but it wasn't on the same day. It was like one a day.
Do you know if the children, based on being in international waters, could I drink alcohol?
No,
You don't know?
no, they didn't. They're not old enough.
What about Anna?
I don't know.
Weren't you aware that the children were gambling at some point?
Well, Anna's 18, so I know she was in there at one point in time, but the other kids were not.
You're sure that the other kids were not gambling?
I'm sure the other kids were not gambling.
As far as, does he have any diagnoses?
He has ADHD.
No further questions from the mother.
Thank you, sir. Cross?
Morning.
Morning.
Ms. Kepner, who all went on the cruise with you?
Myself, my husband, Anna, the two youngest girls, and then my mother-in-law and father-in-law,
And what are their names?
Jeff and Barbara Kepner.
And where was their room in relationship to where your room and the children's room was?
2 floors above us.
Did they also help in the supervision of the children?
Yes, ma'am.
Anna, who we know passed away, she was 18, correct?
Correct.
And was an adult.
Correct.
And was she given the option of staying in another room?
All 3 of the kids were.
Okay. And would that room have been with Grandma and Grandpa?
Correct.
And they didn't want to do that?
No, they wanted to stay together.
Did they all get along?
Yeah, the 3 of them are like the 3 amigos. They're best friends.
Okay. And with regard to, I know you were questioned about him. He's not a suspect, or you haven't been advised by anyone?
Correct. He's not a suspect.
As far as you know, is the only suspect in the death of Anna, your son?
Correct.
So that was from the Shauntel Kepner testimony. And Lauren, it was interesting to hear her describe the dynamic between the 3 who were staying in the room there, saying they were best friends and the 3 amigos, and yet one of them is now dead and one of the others considered the prime suspect in this case.
Yeah, I definitely smirked at that response. Some best friends, right? If those are your best friends, stay away from them. What really, really strikes me is that they allowed these kids to stay in the same room. I understand that, this is what the kids wanted, but parents have a responsibility to make adult choices on behalf of their children, whether or not their children want that, right? Like, that is our role. And there's no world where I can imagine this sleeping arrangement. You've got the 2 9-year-olds with the parents. You've got this mixed gender teenage room. And then to find out you had grandparents that Anna could have stayed with and potentially prevented all of this, it's pretty odd and definitely alarming as a mom. But it does not give rise in the civil court, in the family court, to an emergency. It was an emergency on the boat, but it is no longer an emergency since they are no longer on the cruise ship. And she specifically said that they had the 16-year-old go be with other family for the safety of the children in the home. Another thing she said that really struck me was that she discovered Anna was deceased on Friday morning. Now, my understanding from the reports was that there was a huge search of the ship, and it wasn't until late morning, early afternoon that she was found to have been deceased. So that begs the question, how did she know before everyone else did?
We certainly still have a lot of questions about the investigation because, like we had pointed out before, this was not a hearing in the criminal case, but they're looking at very specific kind of issues that are really only looking at certain aspects of this case in a tangential kind of way and fashion, where we're getting just some of these details.
Yes, this is obviously limited in scope to the immediate safety of the children in the home. And overall, it appears that a spiteful father is taking advantage of someone's loss of life to try to get back, so to speak, to a mother. And maybe he's not happy with their parenting, and I understand that, but does that give a rise to an emergency in this situation? I do not believe so. And I kind of see it as a selfish move on the dad's part, really with complete disregard for this victim. And the fact that, his own children now have to come to grips with a sibling that may have taken a sibling's life. And I don't love it from him. And I certainly don't love the decisions the mom made, but I think this is the wrong avenue to pursue remediating that.
And we don't necessarily know the motivations, but we do know the outcome, and that is that the judge agreed that this did not rise to an emergency and denied that. Now, before we go to break here, I do want to mention that we did hear testimony from a couple of other people, including the adult son, who talked a little bit about some of the dynamics, and I don't have that clipped, but Lauren, you said that could also be potentially relevant in something like this.
Yeah, at the very minimum, it's going to give us some insight into what that household looked like, the Kepner household, and potentially even why the mom would make a decision to, allow the sharing of the room. And potentially, if she is in fact the type of mom that would allow alcohol to be consumed by minors, and that could show maybe why this young man is being accused of this crime. Potentially the household, there's issues in the household that could lead to this. It would be quite insightful, though it wouldn't show us any facts from the actual day of the crime. To your point, it would really just give us an interesting background on possibly how this family has a son that is 16 that is accused of something so gross. Would
that be testimony that could be relevant or included in criminal proceedings, or would that not be allowed? What do you think?
I could definitely see it, certainly in terms of a defense. If it shows that this home is tumultuous or something, that could be part of a very good defense. And every court record is an open and public record, and every court record is allowed into a new court, right? So there's no expiration date. These are official court records. The criminal attorneys can order them, pay for them, and use them in their trial and their prosecution of the young man.
Well, Lauren Cadilac, attorney and legal expert and analyst, we appreciate you joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to take a break, but we'll be right back with more coverage after this. All right, Lauren, you are clear. The next clip I'm going to play Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. Garret Wymer here, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. And we're continuing to take a look at this case in Brevard County earlier today that is in some ways tied to the investigation into the death of Anna Kepner, the Titusville teenager found dead on board the Carnival cruise ship last month. And I want to play for you as we hear from the judge making her decision or announcing her decision to deny that emergency motion to remove one of the other minor children from the custody of Anna's stepmother and place her with her biological father. You'll hear a little bit from the judge about the reasoning. They'll also talk more about the 16-year-old who is the suspect in connection with Anna's death. Staying somewhere else right now and not staying with the family.
The issue for this court today is whether or not the children in this case are in imminent danger. And I've heard lots of testimony with regard to what happened back in 2024, what happened on the West Coast. But other than the incident that happened on the cruise, I've heard nothing to indicate that is in imminent danger or harm at this time. How long is expected to remain with the relative?
At this point, we're not sure. We're not sure what the FBI is going to do, whether he's going to be charged federally or whether they're going to turn it over to the state. My client is waiting to hear on that. They're also waiting on some testing results. They've done a bunch of psychological testing and psychiatric testing, so they're also waiting to hear about that. And so they don't know at this time how long the child is going to be at her relative's house.
Is there any expectation that he will be coming back to Titusville in the near future?
No.
Okay. All right. Then, based on the evidence that's been presented today, I don't find that there is an emergency and that there isn't any imminent risk of harm. I understand that there may be some issues with regard to contempt. I understand that there is a hearing pending on December the 17th before Magistrate Valentin as it relates to the motion for contempt, and I believe an amended motion for contempt has been filed as well. But for my purposes, the only thing that the court was here to hear this morning is the emergency motion for temporary relief, most specifically as to paragraph 19, when it says the youngest child is at immediate risk of abuse, abandonment, or neglect in the care of the respondent. The court has not heard anything to indicate that there is an imminent risk to. Now, certainly, if there was a situation where he was returned to the home and is in the home with, that may be another basis to for a motion to be brought at that time. But so long as he is no longer in the home, I don't see that there would be any risk. So yes, sir, I hear you, Mr. Smith.
I actually didn't say anything yet.
Okay, I looked like you were about to. So I am going to deny the emergency motion for temporary relief. I will prepare a written order, and I will have that order filed, I would anticipate, by Monday or Tuesday of next week. All right, that concludes the proceedings. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was the judge's decision. You heard a little bit more about that. And then the hearing coming to an end in Brevard County earlier today. Going to take one more quick break here on Fox 35 News Plus. When we come back, going to play for you my conversation with Fox 35's Esther Bauer, who was live inside that courtroom. So keep it right here on Fox Local and YouTube, and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. Garret Wymer here, and thanks for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Fox 35's Esther Bauer was in the courtroom for that hearing today, one of several members of the media attending that hearing to see what new details came out about the case involving the death of Anna Kepner. Had the chance to speak with Esther about what happened inside the courtroom and some of the interactions outside the courtroom with the family members as they left.
So the hearing did not last very long. This started just after 9 a.m. and everything was wrapped up around 10:30, 10:45. We can say this was a win for Anna's stepmom, Shauntel, because what her ex was trying to say is all these circumstances that happened on this cruise where 18-year-old Anna Kepner was found dead. Now her 16-year-old stepbrother is being investigated as a suspect in her murder. All this happened under mom's watch. So he was trying to get the other younger children out of the care of his mom. Now, a judge ultimately shot that down. These minor children will not be leaving their home in Titusville. So that's kind of why we were here. What was this custody hearing supposed to be about? But through all this and them trying to build their cases, we've now learned some more details about what was going on that cruise. So some pertinent points that we haven't known until just a few hours prior is that the parents did not see Anna. The last time they saw her was Thursday at 6:30 p.m. And we are told around 7 p.m. was the final time they saw the 16-year-old stepbrother. So 6:30 for Anna, just a half an hour later, that was the final time Anna's stepmom, Shauntel, said while in court she saw both of those kids. Keep in mind, Anna was found the following day, the entire night hour, and then 11 a.m. is when that medical call came out. Anna was pronounced dead on the cruise ship 11:17. So we're getting just some more details of when were the children last seen by their parents. Also, there was conversation of what was the sleeping situation? Where were parents? Where were kids? The mother said that who they were booking this cruise with, their travel rep, suggested to them that they do the separate rooms. Mom and dad were staying, hallway was right here. All the three kids were staying in the room directly across from them. We confirmed ages 18, 16, 14. 18-year-old was Anna. 16-year-old is the stepbrother that is currently being investigated for this alleged murder. 14-year-old was another child. And again, these are step siblings that were staying in that same room at the same time. The mother said during her time speaking to a judge that these kids did not have access to drinking. However, another witness was called. This was a stepmother of Shauntel, who said that she did see Shauntel serving underage children liquor in an earlier time frame. So that was brought up, but again, Shauntel immediately and has said from the beginning the kids were not drinking on this cruise. So those were some really big takeaways from what we learned. The family did leave the courthouse just a few minutes ago. We tried to ask them, I should say, how will they get justice for Anna? Do they know what happened on that cruise ship? The family had sunglasses on, both the ex-husband's side and Shauntel and her current husband, which is Anna's dad, left without saying a word. So everyone has since departed from the courtroom. Something else we learned, which we've reported on, and early on in this, one of the first confirmations we had about Anna dying back in November was from her school, that Temple Christian school. We learned today during the court hearing the other minor children that were attending that school were unenrolled by the school. The school ultimately told the family there was too much media surrounding what had happened on that cruise ship. So they are now putting their other minor children in other school because the Christian school where Anna was attending and all the kids were going, told them they can no longer attend that school. So a lot of new developments. Again, this didn't go in the biological dad's favor. And again, this would be the biological dad of the suspect being investigated by the FBI because he wanted his other minor daughter to be immediately put in his hands, in his care. But we're also hearing mother testified that the 16-year-old stepbrother who's under investigation will not be allowed back into their home going forward. Her and Anna's dad, Chris, and there is no timeline. Again, no one's been arrested. No one's been charged for this. But she also did say at this time and going forward, they are not welcoming that child back into their home. That child is staying with a relative of the mom. And as we learned, the FBI has not told them when they would move forward, where things are and what they're looking into. So for the foreseeable future, this 16-year-old stepbrother of Anna will be staying somewhere else and will not be welcomed back into his parents' home, at least his mother's home, going forward.
Esther, when we spoke yesterday, we talked about the subpoena for Christopher Kepner, who is Anna's biological father, and you outlined the difficulties of the process server trying to get that subpoena to him. We talked about some of the questions of whether he might show up, whether he might be called to testify. Was he there today?
Christopher was there. Anna's dad was there. He walked hand in hand in with his wife, Shauntel. He was in court, but he was not called to the stand. The judge only allowed 3 witnesses from the ex-husband's side to speak. She ultimately said, "I have heard enough. This does not rise to this. This does not rise to the fact where we need to immediately pull the other minor children out." But Anna's dad, Chris, was in court, did not have to speak, and also didn't say anything when he left with his wife.
It looked like there were quite a few people inside the courtroom. What was the scene like in there in the gallery?
So we do know that they had to move it to a larger courtroom because they were prepping for what was going to be a large turnout of media and other people that were going to be. The courtroom was not full, but what they did do is they wanted to bar any witnesses. There were several witnesses that were called, someone from DCF, someone from the Christian school, 2 people from the Christian school that we didn't hear from. All the witnesses were told to leave when every witness was called in. Both sides did not want other witnesses to hear what the other people were saying. So because of that, the courtroom was even more bare. There was a decent amount of media, but the courtroom was by no way full.